in Texas.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I thank the distinguished lady for her commitment and this very important resolution and the opportunities to meet with her and advocate as she convenes the South Sudan and Sudan caucus and works as a ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee Subcommittee on Africa with our chairman, Mr. Smith, and of course I thank Mr. Royce and Mr. Engel leading the full committee, and those who came to the floor, Mr. Crowley and certainly Mr. Payne, who has a legacy that he is holding in such high esteem by his own leadership. I was in South Sudan with the late Congressman Donald Payne as the right to return was implemented, and the individuals who were fleeing Sudan came with joy and tears as they exited the buses that were bringing them in. They clearly were joyful. This was a homecoming, and we look forward to a great recognition of the assets and minerals and various wealth that South Sudan could have to help all of its people and even to try and help those still in Darfur, even though in Sudan. We met with then President and Vice President who have now turned into enormous conflict and rising up against each other and killing and causing people to flee. And so I want to congratulate Congresswoman Bass for this resolution for us to be on record relating to efforts to respond to the famine in South Sudan. And I take this moment just to read this story about a woman who is an example of what the fear and fright is. By day, Mary Nairak scours swamps for fish and edible water lilies. When darkness falls and South Sudan's militia retreat to their bases, she and hundreds of others fleeing a 3-year civil war slip onto dry land and tend crops to stave off famine. Prowling hyenas pose a threat during Nairak's nighttime harvest, but they worry far less, or she worries far less than the armed men who can appear in the daytime. The 20-year-old said as she sat beneath neem trees in the northern county of Lear, one of the 2 areas in South Sudan where the United Nations in February made the world's first declaration of famine since 2011. She and other residents are facing a catastrophe that is being echoed by looming mass food shortages in Somalia, Yemen, and northern Nigeria. This is devastating. An article in Bloomberg News, 100,000 in those counties, 5 million all throughout of Sudan, South Sudan. But it is in all of sub-Saharan Africa. So I believe that this resolution brings all of us together, Republicans and Democrats, makes the statement of the United States House of Representatives, then on to the Senate, then for the President to make the statement, as Congressman Bass so aptly states in this resolution, to let humanitarian aid come in, let there be food that will reach those starving, and particularly the children that are apt to die in this region. It is well known as well that women are not treated in the way that they should, and I look forward to working with Congressman Bass with H.R. 48 that deals specifically with the rights of women, providing them with human rights and women's participation in leadership. That is certainly missing. But now people are starving. And so I would ask my colleagues to join me in supporting Res.187 relating to efforts to respond to the famine in South Sudan, and be reminded of Mary, who scours the swamp for fish and edible water lilies, if at all possible, and fears the onslaught of violence during the day. They cannot live this way. They can only die this way. Support Res. 187 so that we can save lives. I thank you, Congresswoman Bass, for yielding the time. I yield back.
Ms. Bass reserves her time. Gentlemen.